Okay. Hello everyone, this is Reverend Dr. Roger Paul. Tonight we're going to study paper 112, Personality Survival. And that starts on page 1225.1 in the original book. That's paper 112, paragraph 1. And the last time we did this paper was in 2012, November 2012, and I was telling Millie it took us 4 times to get through it, so 4 things, so hopefully it won't take us that long this time. Let's say a little prayer and we'll get started. Father, thank you for bringing us together tonight that we might study this paper and then we might learn from it. This is a very interesting paper, and we appreciate the fact that we have this information, where we're going and what's happening to us after we pass and move on to the next level. And we thank you for the opportunity to share this with others and learn this ourselves. And we say this in the name of your Son, Jesus of Nazareth, Michael of Netherlands. Amen. All right, so let's get started. Get to the right slide. Personality survival. The evolutionary planets are the spheres of human origin, the initial worlds of the ascending mortal career. Urantia is your starting point. Here you and your divine thought adjuster are joined in temporary union. You have been endowed with a perfect guide. Therefore, if you will sincerely run the race of time and gain the final goal of faith, the reward of the ages shall be yours. You will be eternally united with your indwelling adjuster. Then will begin your real life, the ascending life, to which your present mortal state is but the vestibule. Then will begin your exalted and progressive mission as finaliters in the eternity which stretches out before you. And throughout all of these successive ages and stages of evolutionary growth, there is one part of you that remains absolutely unaltered, and that is personality. Permanence of the presence of change. So, this personality we have in this life goes with us to the mansion worlds. Not only to the mansion world, but after we fuse with your adjuster, all the way through the exciting career for us going ahead of us to discovering God the Father and becoming finaliters after we've discovered God the Father. So this personality of this existence is very important, and that's what fuses with the adjuster. Okay. Let's see. Millie, would you take the first? There's several of these, 1 through quite a bit of them. So why don't you take the first one, and we'll just work through these one by one. All right?
Okay. While it would be presumptuous to attempt the definition of personality, it may prove helpful to recount some of the things which are known about personality.
Let's see. Let me get my order in mind here. Bill, would you take the next one, please? We can go after Millie tonight.
Okay. Personality is that quality in reality which is bestowed by the universal Father himself, or by the conjoint actor acting for the Father.
So personality, we actually receive from God the Father himself in God's personality circuit. All right? So as we begin our existence, our personality is endowed to us through God the Father, and many creatures by the conjoint actor acting in place of God the Father. And creatures such as the guardian Seraphim and things like that can get their personality through the conjoint actor, but it's coming from God the Father, okay, acting for him.
Hey, you might want to know, there's a good Bible verse that goes with that. It's Jeremiah 1:5.
Okay, do you have that in front of you?
I do. I have it in my memory bank.
Okay, I just curious.
You were formed in the womb. I knew you.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. All right. Right.
That's one that really struck me personally.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
That's,
remember you talking about that, Bill.
yeah, I think we talked about that back in 2012, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
When we read this before. Stephen, would you take the next one, please?
Okay. It may be bestowed on any living energy system, which includes mind or spirit.
So there's a lot of variations of energy systems. Well, they talk about living energy systems. These are types of beings, but each one of these beings must include a mind or a spirit with it. So it can be bestowed on any type of being that God the Father chooses to bestow it on. All right? Rodney, would you take the next one, please?
It is not wholly subject to the fetters of antecedent causation. It is relatively creative or co-creative.
So it can be bestowed on personal beings that are not affected by things like living on this earth. That's what they're talking about antecedent causation and accidental happenings and things like that. So it can be a creative being like a creator son, or it could be a co-created being like any of the associated spirits, right? So it's got lots of forms. All right, Diane.
4. When bestowed upon evolutionary material creatures, it causes spirit to strive for the mastery of energy matter through the mediation of mind.
Okay, so we are considered evolutionary material creatures, okay? And we're striving to master the energy of this world. In other words, the biochemical and the physical bodies of this world through our mind, through the mediation of our mind, okay? 5, personality, while devoid of identity, can unify the identity of any living energy system, okay? So personality by itself basically is devoid of any identity. The way it becomes identity is by being identified with a living energy system or somebody, okay? So our personality is given to us, so that gives it identity by being matched with us. Okay? All right. Millie, would you take the next one, please?
You're muted, Millie.
Got it. Thank you. Number 6, it discloses only qualitative responses to the personality circuit, in contradistinction to the 3 energies which show both qualitative and quantitative response to gravity.
Okay, so it is a personal quality, and so it responds to the personality circuit by a qualitative nature. Instead of multiplying itself or becoming a qualitative or quantitative response to gravity itself. It does not react to gravity, in other words, okay? It becomes part of the being that's bestowed too. The personality circuit is its own circuit within itself, and it goes through all personalities. But it can be in a person or a being without having to be responsive to gravity itself. And we know that gravity is responsive to paradox, right? All right. Bill, would you take the next one?
7. Personality is changeless in the presence of change.
What are they talking about here? They're talking about the personality you have in this body is changeless. It's the same personality you will awaken with when you get to the mansion worlds, okay? And the presence of change are these multiple changes we go through from the mansion world on. You know, we go through 590 different tweaks of our Morontia being and many more in our spirit being. So personality stays the same through all of these changes. All right?
Roger,
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
I would say the personality is changeless in the face of change. What about, the will of the person?
What of the person?
The will of the
The
person.
will of the person. Well, that is the personality, part of the personality.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what they're talking about. That is changeless. Changeless, in other words, it stays the same regardless of what vehicle we go into next. And that we're talking about the Morontia vehicles. So it stays the same with every single interpretation of our new existence. As we go through the Morontia stages, we stay the same. And it's our will that allows us to do that will.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So whatever our will is will stay the same throughout all of these.
Huh?
Whatever our will is will stay the same throughout all of these changes.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I have a hard time saying that personality does not change.
It grows, Millie. Personality grows. In other words, your knowledge and experience and all those things. But that person of what they're talking about is that being who you are right now does not transform into some other type of being. You will always be who you are. That's what they're talking about, right?
Well, I'm thinking of my father, that when I was small, he was a violent man.
Yeah.
He was not a nice person. But in the last years of his life, when I was taking care of him, he was living in my guest house and he was over in the nursing home, he had mellowed. He was not that same personality, not at all.
Well, that's the attributes of a personality, Billy. It's not the same thing. He's still the same person he always was, but his personal attributes and his attitudes, that's the sort of things that will grow and change, right? But he's still the same being. It's just he's grown in knowledge and wisdom and things like that, so that's why he changed. You see what I'm
He
saying?
mellowed.
He mellowed, right. All right. Let's see who's next. Stephen, I think, is next.
It can make a gift to God, and it are the fruit of doing the will of God.
So when you decide to do the will of God as your own personality, it's a gift to God the Father of doing His will. Okay? So that's your gift to God by doing the will of God. All right. Rodney, would you take the next one, please?
I think that's the only gift that you do have.
That's the only gift you can give God. That's correct.
Okay, number 9. It is characterized by awareness of reality, of relativity of relationship with other person. He discerns conduct levels and choosingly discriminates between them.
Okay, so an attribute of personality is morality, moral choice. Okay, and that's what makes us different from many of the animals. Okay, because we have moral choices. All right, and we are aware of our relationship with other persons or other beings. Okay, and we decide to choose between the moral choices we make with those beings. Right. And Diane?
10. Personality is unique, absolutely unique. It is unique in time and space. It is unique in eternity and on paradise. It is unique when bestowed. There are no duplicates. It is unique during every moment of existence. It is unique in relation to God. He is is no respecter of persons, but neither does he add them together, for they are non-addable. They are associable, but non-totalable.
Totalable. That's right. So each and every personal being, each and every one is unique in its own way, just like a snowflake, right? And we can all call ourselves personal beings, but we stay unique all the way until we get to paradise, and then even after that. And God doesn't add us together. We stay unique throughout the whole time. And even after fusion, our unique personality makes our Father fragment and us together a unique being, okay, with the Father fragment. So God, even after we fuse, doesn't add us all up as one, right? All right. 11. Personality responds directly to other personality presence. So we respond to other beings that's close to us, and as we come back in contact with them. All right, Millie, would you take the next one?
12. It is one thing which can be added to spirit, thus illustrating the primacy of the Father in relation to the Son. Mind does not have to be added to spirit.
Okay, so the personality, it can be added to a spirit being, but it is not necessary that mind be added to a spirit being. Only the personality, the mind goes with it, right? All right. Bill, you take the next one,
Okay. 13. Personality may survive mortal death with identity being the soul. The adjusted and the personality are changeless. The relationship between them and the soul is nothing but change, continuing the evolution. And if this change, growth, cease, the soul would cease.
Okay, so it's personality and the adjuster that comes together to add to the soul, and then the soul evolves over and over and over and over. It never stops changing, right? Talking about the personality not changing, but the soul itself continues to change, right? On and on.
All right.
All right, Stephen, would you take the next one?
Okay. Personality is unique in conscious and mind, and this is something other than time, perception, mind, or spirit.
Okay, so the personalities concept or consciousness of time is different than the way we perceive time right now. Okay? To us as a human being, time seems very short, right? Because we see an end of our physical existence coming. But the personality looks at time in a totally different way because it sees no end, right? It sees us as going on and on and on and on. So your personality perceives time in a different way than our human thought patterns conceive time. All right. Did Stephen just read? Rodney, would you take the next one?
One, personality and reality. Personality is bestowed by the universal Father on his creatures as a potentially eternal endowment. Such a divine gift is designed to function on numerous levels and in successive universe situations, ranging from the lowly finite to the highest absolute, even to the borders of the absolute. Personality thus performs on 3 cosmic planes, or in 3 universe phases.
So the personality the Father gives us will go with us in all of our ranges as we graduate through the successive levels in the universe. And this is going to be evident in the next slide. Diana.
1. Position status. Personality functions equally efficiently in the local universe, in the super universe, and in the central universe. 2. Meaning status. Personality performs effectively on the levels of the finite, the absolute, and even as impinging upon the absolute. 3. Value status. Personality can be experientially realized in the progressive realms of material, the Morontia, and the spiritual.
Okay, you notice it covers all three levels, the material, the morontial, and the spiritual. But it also covers the three types of statuses, and that's the position status, the meanings, and the values. And we've heard this over and over in the book about meanings and values. And the same personality functions throughout all of these. Personality has a perfected range of cosmic dimensional performance. The dimensions of the finite personality are 3, and they are roughly functional as follows. I got a little girl that's scared to death. There's a storm outside, so she's going to be on our video for a little bit tonight. You okay, sweetie? Yeah, it's okay. It's just a storm. Huh? Yes, Dixie. She don't usually come in. She's an outside cat and she's scared to death. All right, let's keep going. Millie, would you take the next one?
Yes, number 1, length. Length represents direction and nature of progression, movement through space, and according to time evolution. 2. Vertical depth embraces the orgasmal drives and attitudes, the varying levels of self-realization, and the general phenomenon of reaction to environment. Number 3 is breadth. It embraces the domain of coordination, association, and selfhood organization.
So basically, it is good for in every direction we expand, right? Length, vertical depth, and breadth, basically. And as we go through time and space, through evolution, the same personality stays with us in every dimension as we go through it, right? And that's what they're talking about here, all right? Bill, would you take the next one, please?
Okay. The type of personality bestowed upon Urantia mortals has a potentiality of 7 dimensions of self-expression or person realization. These dimensional phenomena are realizable as 3 on the finite level, 3 on the absolute level, and 1 on the absolute level. On sub-absolute level, this 7th or totality dimension is experienceable as the fact of personality. This supreme dimension is an associable absolute, and while not infinite, is dimensionally potential for sub-infinite penetration of the absolute.
And what are they talking about here? They're talking about our progression through the various universe levels, right? So we go through 3 on the finite level, right? And what are they talking about here? The finite level, we're talking about the physical levels, number 1, and then the other 2 move into the Morontia, graduating up to the local universe. And then we have 3 more levels, and this goes through our spirit level experience, and that goes all the way to paradise, experiencing up to God the Father. And the final one, the last level, is that which is coming in the future, and that will be the absolute or the sub-infinite level. In other words, it gets us into that infinite existence. So that's what they're talking about here. All right.
I got another Bible verse you might be interested in.
Yeah, what's that, Bill?
Psalm 139, 15 and 16.
Uh-huh.
It says, my bones were not hidden from you when I was made in secret, when I was woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes even saw me as an embryo. All its parts were written in your book regarding the days when they were formed, before any of them existed.
That's interesting. Must be part of the personality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Bill, would you take this, did we skip over? No. Would you take this next one, please?
Yeah. The finite dimensions of personality have to do with cosmic length, depth, and depth. Length denotes meaning, depth signifies value, breadth embracing insight, the capacity to experience unchallengeable consciousness of cosmic reality.
So this personality embraces all aspects of the universe, right? The cosmic universe. And that's what this length, breadth, and depth is, right? Stephen, would you take the next one, please?
On the Morontia level, all of these finite dimensions of the material level are greatly enhanced, and certain new dimensional values are realizable. All these enlarged dimensional experience of the Morontia level are marvelously articulated with the supreme or personality dimensions through the influence of Mota, and also because of the contribution of Morontia mathematics.
So we expand into the Morontia type being, right? Okay, and as we expand into our Morontianess, we get this influence of the Mota and the Morontia being, right? This is still considered part of the finite. Rodney, would you take the next one, please?
Much trouble experienced by mortals in their studies of human personality could be avoided if the finite creature would remember that dimensional levels and spiritual levels are not coordinated in experiential personality realization.
So they're not locked in stone. These levels overlap each other from the finite to the Morontia to the spiritual, right? It's not a clear-cut thing. Personality remains the same. All right. Thank you.
Life is really a process which takes place between the organism, selfhood, and its environment. The personality imparts value, identity, and meanings of continuity to this organismal environmental association. Thus, it will be recognized that the phenomenon of stimulus response is not a mere mechanical process, since the personality functions as a factor in the total situation. It is ever true that mechanisms are innately passive, organisms inherently active.
Okay, so the mechanics or the physical organisms are passive in nature. It's the personality has to be superimposed on them, okay? And that makes the organisms inherently active. And that gives us meanings to our association between our environment and the organism itself, okay? And that's what they're talking about, this organismal environment, all right? Physical life is a process taking place not so much within the organism as between the organism and the environment. And every such process tends to create and establish organismal patterns of reaction to such an environment. and all such directed patterns are highly influential and goal choosing. Okay? So basically, life goes on, basically, it's the process of the organism interacting between other organisms or other beings and the environment around them. Okay? And as we do this, establishing patterns with other organisms gives us a reaction to our current environment, which might be finite or morontia or spiritual. All right, and in doing that, it changes or associates our choosing goals as we go through this process of discovering the universe. It is through the mediation of mind that the self and the environment establish meaningful contact. The ability and willingness of the organism to make such significant contacts with environment response to a drive represents the attitude of the whole personality. So as we choose pathways and we choose which way to go and that sort of thing, how to react to each other, it represents an attitude in our personality, how we react to each other, right? Okay, and the next one really helps explain this a little more. Millie.
Personality cannot very well perform in isolation. Man is innately a social creature. He is dominated by the craving of belongingness. It is literally true that no man lives unto himself.
Okay, so this is really important you get this. What they've been talking about up to this personality. We do not function well as beings, either finite, morontia, spiritual, or whatever, as isolated beings. We function best when we interact with other beings. Okay? So that's what they're talking about here, that we are innately a social creature. We need each other. We need this human interaction as personalities between each other, right? And that's why we have this inner dominating craving to belong to something, to belong to groups, to be married, to belong to each other, to belong to people that's like-minded like we are, all right? And that's why they say, hey, no man lives by himself, because when you live in isolation, you don't have the interaction of another personality. So you have nowhere to basically throw your thoughts out to somebody else and it come back in a different form. You can sit there and talk to yourself all day long, but if no one responds to you, it means nothing, right? So for growth in the universe, we need to interact with each other and other beings, basically. It's as simple as that you put it. All right? All right. Bill, would you take the next one?
Okay. What the concept of the personality as the meaning of the whole of the living and functioning creature means much more than the integration of relationships. It signifies the unification of all factors of reality, as well as coordination of relationships. Relationships exist between two objects, but three or more objects eventuate a system. And such a system is much more than just an enlarged or complex relationship. This distinction is vital, for in a cosmic system, the individual members are not with each other except in relation to the whole.
That means each personality is totally unique within the group, right? And we have a relationship between the objects or the beings in the group, but when you end up with more than two, you end up in a system. And the universe is set up the same way. When you have more than two objects in a solar system, you end up with a system rather than just a planet on its own, right? So it works the same way in the physical relationships, okay? That these relationships exist between the objects, and that's the same way with personality. All right. Stephen, would you take the next one, please?
All right. In a human organism, the summation of its parts constitutes selfhood, individuality, but such a process has nothing whatever to do with personality, which is the unifier of all these factors as related to cosmic realities.
So it's the personality is the glue that keeps us together as a being, right? Because it's the personality that connects the thought adjuster with the mind record of that person, and the personality which goes into creating the Morontia soul, right? So it's all these things together that bring it together to make us selfhood, or makes us who we are, or will become, right? Rodney.
In a human organism, the summation of its parts, in aggregations, parts are added, and systems, parts are arranged. Systems are significant because of organization, positional values. In a good system, all factors are in cosmic position. In a bad system, something is either missing or displaced, arranged. In the human system, it is the personality which unifies all activities and in turn imparts the qualities of identity and creativity.
So it's the personality is the glue that puts it all together then, right?
To the self, it would be helpful in the study of self to remember, 1, that physical systems are subordinate. 2, that intellectual systems are coordinate. 3, that personality is superordinate. 4, that the indwelling spiritual force is potentially directed.
Okay, so let's go through each one of these. Physical systems are subordinate. They're subordinate to each other in gravity and things like that, you know, if you take a regular system. Also, the system like a human body is subordinate to something else, like the mind that controls it, right? Intellectual systems are things that are coordinated. In other words, when we have more than one intellect, they coordinate together to come together to change things, right? But personality is superordinate. It controls everything, right? Personality controls our coming together of our mind, our adjuster, and our soul to come together to create the soul, right? It's the superordinate part of that, right? And the indwelling spiritual force, in our case, that's the adjuster, right, is potentially directive. It directs us back to where? God the Father, right? All right. Let's go on. In all concepts of selfhood, it should be recognized that the fact of life comes first. We have to live, right? Its evaluation or interpretation later. The child first lives and subsequently thinks about his living. In the cosmic economy, insight precedes foresight. In other words, we've got to think about it before we do it, right? All right. Millie, could you take the next one, please?
The universe fact of God's becoming man has forever changed all meanings and altered all values of human personality. In the true meaning of the world, love connotes mutual regard of whole personalities, whether human or divine, or human and divine. Parts of the self may function in numerous ways: thinking, feeling, wishing, but only the coordinated attributes of the whole personality are focused in intelligent action, and all of these powers are associated with the spiritual endowment of the moral mind, where a human being sincerely and unselfishly loves another being, human or divine.
Okay, a lot in this paragraph. Okay. The first about the universal fact of God becoming man, forever changed, God's becoming man, all meanings and values. Right? What are they talking about here? Two things. First, by giving us a thought adjuster, we have a father fragment that comes down and becomes part of man, right? But there's another aspect of this that we need to remember. God literally became man in Jesus of Nazareth, right? The creator of our local universe came down and became a human being just like us, okay? So divinity stepped down from high on the hill down to the basic of finite, the lowest finite type of being, even a baby, okay? So that changes our whole concept of personality for both the human and the divine, all right? Because the divine became human, and in us, the human becomes divine through the adjuster. So it works both ways, right? I think I said that right. All right. But also, this thought of personality becoming action has to do with the mortal mind sincerely wanting to love and serve other human beings or the divine being, which is God the Father, right? So it works both ways. The spiritual endowment of the mortal mind comes into action when the personality wants to love one another, love all the humans, and love God as the Father. And that's what Jesus taught us. You see how this all comes together? All right. Bill, would you take the next one, please?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
In our local universe, our Creator Son became man.
Right.
Okay. How about other local universes?
The same exact thing happens.
Would they have been required to be man?
Yes, all Creator Sons, Bill, all Creator Sons are required to become sovereigns of their universe, have to incarnate in all 7 types of beings that they create in every single local universe. So every Creator Son has to do a bestowal as a human being in his local universe. So it's not only Jesus that had to do this, but all the other order of Michael, the Jesuses of other universes, had to do the exact same thing.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we know that there's 700,000 active right now. So all 700,000, whether now, in the past, now, or in the future, they will all have to completely complete their 7 bestowals to become master sons and become sovereigns of their own universe. Right?
Right.
But not all universes have human beings like us.
Yes, they do. All universes has human beings. They may not look like us, Millie, but they're human people. They're human type beings. They may not look exactly like we do. They may have pointed eyes, green heads, be real skinny. They may look like the Greys, but they're still considered humans, right?
Okay.
Yeah, there's human beings on every local universe, all the way through the galaxy.
Just not on every planet.
Just not on every planet. That's correct. Yeah. Okay?
Thank you for answering that for us.
Something to keep in mind too about that is this. Human beings are created from patterns that come from where? Paradise. So all the Creator Son creates their local universe and all their beings in their local universe from patterns that are already on paradise. So if all of them's already on paradise, they'll all look similar and act similar to those paradise beings in which the patterns came from, right? So we're in essence like a carbon copy of some type of being that's already resident on paradise.
That's very comforting.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And people forget that, right?
I'll go on and read you.
Okay,
We never read that paragraph yet.
no,
Sorry, I gotta have myself.
All moral concepts of reality are based on the assumption of the actuality of human personality. All concepts of superhuman realities are based on the experience of the human personality with and in the cosmic realities of certain associated spiritual entities and divine personalities. Everything non-spiritual in the human experience, excepting personality, is a means to an end. Every true relationship of mortal man with other persons, human or divine, is an end in itself. And such fellowship with the personality of deity is the eternal goal of universe ascension.
this is one of the secrets of the universe in this paragraph, okay? And I'm going to say this as simple as I possibly can because they lay it out here very well.
Right.
Our relationship with other human beings, all right, human or divine, is an end in itself. So all of our experience on this planet, how we interact with other people and other beings, is an end in itself, in a fruition of our goal of life. Okay? So our goal of life, one of the two things that is a goal of our life is to interact with other beings, human beings, and love them like we love ourselves. Okay? That's goal number one. What's the second goal? The second goal is the fellowship of the personality of deity. And what is that? Our thought adjuster, right?
Mhm.
Our father fragment. So our two goals in life are to love one another as ourself and to love God the Father as ourself, right? And in doing that, we have basically fulfilled our whole goal of existence on this planet. All the rest of it is not important. You follow me? That's the two things in life that leads us to a spiritual life. Those two things. And those two things not only leads us to a spiritual life, that's the same thing we're going to be doing when we get to the mansion worlds and go through the spirit worlds too, right? We're going to be doing the exact same thing. We're going to be serving each other and loving each other and loving our Father fragment or loving God the Father and interacting with that for deity, right? So that's the key to the existence right there in that paragraph. Does that make sense to everyone? Pretty simple, isn't it? People say, "Why am I on this planet? Why am I on this planet?" This is it. That's the whole why. Answers the questions of why am I here, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, the problem is we care more about animals than we people things.
Not necessarily everybody, but some people do, Stephen. Some people care more about animals. Some people care more about drinking and running around and having sex with everybody they can hit. And people think about other different things, but that's not the goal of life, is it?
No, it's not.
It's really not. Those are all just extras to life, right? On the outskirts of what the real life is about, right? All right. Stephen, would you take the next one?
Okay. The possessions of personality identifies man as a spiritual being since the itself demonstrates the presence and indicates the working of spirit synthesized and cosmic consciousness in the human mind.
So you can't help yourself, basically. Because you have personality and are self-conscious of your own personality, that is an endowment of the supermaterial world, of the spiritual world, right? And just the fact that you, even if you're a materialist, you can't deny the whole existence of the supermaterial world and the realities of the supermaterial world. Okay, that in itself just shows that you have a consciousness in the human mind of the cosmic reality of the universe. All right, you can't help it. Part of our being. All right, Rodney.
There exists a great cosmic gulf between matter and thought, and this gulf is immeasurably greater between material mind and spiritual love. Consciousness, much less self-consciousness, cannot be explained by any theory of mechanistic electronic association or materialistic energy phenomena.
So you can study the brain waves and the brain patterns and what the brain does all you want to till the end of time, all right? But there's such a cosmic gulf between matter and thought, it will still not make any sense to you, right? I mean, no matter how you try, right? The only thing we know for sure is we have a mind and we have a spiritual love for one another, right? And regardless of all these chemical things that go in on your brain, and you can study the brain and map it out and see what's moving and what's not moving and all that, which means nothing as far as what the reality of life is, and that's to love one another and serve God, right? So, interesting they put that in there. Okay. And I think you're next.
As mind pursues reality to its ultimate analysis, matter vanishes to the material senses, but may still remain real to mind. When spiritual insight pursues that reality which remains after the disappearance of matter, and pursues it to an ultimate analysis, it vanishes to mind. But the insight of spirit can still perceive cosmic realities and supreme values of spiritual nature. Accordingly does science give way to philosophy, while philosophy must surrender to the conclusions inherent in genuine spiritual experience. Thinking surrenders to wisdom, and wisdom is lost in enlightenment and reflective worship.
So it's a process you can't ignore, right? It goes from the material world to the spiritual world to science to philosophy to spiritual experience, and then eventually to worship and wisdom, right? The seventh adjective. And eventually all this surrenders to the thoughts of enlightened and reflective worship of God the Father. Right? Worship and wisdom. That's what it comes down to. Right. In science, the human selves observe the material world. Philosophy, the observation of this observation of the material world. Religion, true religious experience, is the experiential realization of the cosmic reality of the observation of all this relative synthesis of the energy materials of time and space, what's going on around us. To build a philosophy of the universe on an exclusive materialism is to ignore the fact that all things material are initially conceived and real in the experience of human consciousness. That's not material, right? The observer cannot be the thing observed. Evaluation demands some degree of transcendence of the thing which is being evaluated. So just the fact that your mind conceives of the material nature of the world is in itself proof that you're not of just this physical world. There's something above the physical world, right? Lily.
In time, thinking leads to wisdom, and wisdom leads to worship. In eternity, worship leads to wisdom, and wisdom eventuates in the finality of thought.
Always comes back to concentrate on God the Father, right? Worship and wisdom. Bill, would you take the next one, please?
The possibility of the unification of the evolving self is inherent in the qualities of its constitutive factors, the basic energies, the master tissues, the fundamental chemical control, the supreme ideas, the supreme motives, the supreme goals, and the divine spirit of paradise bestowal, the secret of the self-consciousness of man's spiritual nature.
What are they talking about there? The paradise bestowal? What are they saying here? It's the bestowal of the Father fragment onto human beings or onto man, which gives us the consciousness of man's spiritual nature. Right? And if it wasn't for this thought adjuster that's instilled within us, we would have a hard time to overcome anything, this chemical overcontrol, to have supreme ideas, supreme motives, supreme goals, right, in our life without that thought adjuster. Right? Okay?
Comment.
Yes.
The supreme goal and the divine spirit of paradise bestowal. Now, doesn't that also mean, since God the Father comes from paradise,
Right.
and we come from Him, our personalities come from Him, aren't we bestowed from paradise?
We are. And our goal is to return to where, Bill? To paradise, right?
Right.
We have that indwelt monitor that is constantly leading us back through the progression back to Him, right?
Right.
All right.
And that's what basically, He sent us out here to experience everything in the time-space continuum and bring it all back to Him.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And that experience also goes to the Supreme also, right? And the Supreme evolves from all of our experience together, right?
Right.
Kind of interesting.
Now, let me hypothesize something here.
Yeah.
Isn't that sort of are we in the school of possibility of creating future creative sons in the second, third, fourth, and fifth bands of universe creation?
That's definitely possible. We may be prepared for as administrators of those worlds, or God may have a totally different plan for us. You know? We don't know. One thing's for sure, we're gaining experience that is not possible if we hadn't started as finite beings. That's for sure. So the experience we have as finite beings is so valuable as we get to paradise that it's non-replaceable. You can't teach someone experience. They have to go through it themselves. So what God has prepared for us in the future outer space levels probably has something to do with us starting out on this level so small and then building up to meeting Him in paradise, into paradise deity, right? So it's just what an adventure if you think about it. It really is. All right.
I wish I had known this when I was a young girl, 6 or 7,
Yeah,
and then just grown up with it.
yeah. Think of the growth you'd be having as you go through it. All right. Stephen, would you take the next one, please?
Okay. The purpose of cosmic evolution is to achieve unity personality, both human and superhuman, is characterized by an inherent cosmic quality which may be called evolution's dominant, the expansion of the control of both itself and its environment.
So as we evolve, the whole purpose of evolution is that as we evolve, we become more and more responsive to what? Thought adjuster, right? And eventually, when we get to fusion, we want not only response to thought adjuster, we want total dominance of the thought adjuster in our being, right? So that God's thought or God's will actually does become our will 100% of the time, right? It's the dominance of the thought adjuster, right? Eventually, that's our goal. Let's see. Rodney.
An ascending, one-time human personality passes through two great phases of increasing volitional dominance over the self and in the universe. Number one, the pre-finaliter or God-seeking experience of augmenting the self-realization through a technique of identity expansion and actualization together of cosmic qualities and consequent universe mastery. Two, the post-finaliter or God-revealing experience of the creative expansion of self-realization through revealing the supreme being of experience to the God-seeking intelligences who have not yet attained the divine levels of God-likeness.
Okay, this is really breaks it down good. It really does. Okay. First, they're talking about as we ascend. We have two great phases, right? First, we have the volitional dominance over self, right, in the universe, controlling our own self. We want to be dominated by God, right? And we do this by two ways. First, the pre-finaliter or God-seeking experience. What are they talking about? That's all of our climb up to God the Father in paradise. All these universes we go through, all 7 super universes, all the way up till we stand before God the Father. And that's our pre-finaliter experience, right? That after we've stood before God the Father, it becomes our post-finaliter experience. And our job at that point is to reveal to beings that haven't made it to the finaliter point the experience of the Supreme Being and the divine levels of the God-likeness. In other words, teaching others the same thing we came from the beginning. Right? So the post-finaliters are out in what? The super universes, helping to train beings like ourselves so that they can also make it to God the Father at this point. That's our goal. What's their goal after that? We do not know yet. That's a plan for the outer space levels that God has in only His mind. Right? Only God the Father knows what that is. All right? Lady next.
Ascending personality is attained
Analogous.
analogous experiences through their various universe adventures as they seek for a large capacity for ascertaining and executing the divine wills of the supreme, ultimate, and absolute deities.
Well, they're talking about descending personalities here. We would be descending personalities after we become finaliters, right? Who else are descending personalities? All the local universe sons and daughters like the Adams and Eves and all the personnel like that, that comes down to planets to help human beings along, right? So that is basically what they're talking about, descending personalities along with us. And we're trying to give other beings capacity for ascertaining and executing the divine wills of the supreme, the ultimate, and the absolute deities for the future in the outer space levels, right?
Hello.
All right. Millie, would you take something we lose somewhere?
Is there something wrong there?
Huh? I just forgot. Millie, would you take the next one, please?
Hello.
Millie, your microphone is muted.
Material self, the ego entity of human identity, is dependent during the physical life on the continuing function of the material life vehicle, on the continued existence of the unbalanced equilibrium of energies and intellect, which on Urantia has been given the name life. But selfhood of survival value, selfhood that can transcend the experience of death, is only evolved by establishing a potential transfer of the sealed identity of the evolving personality from the transient life vehicle, which is our material body, to the more enduring and immortal nature of the Morontia soul, and on beyond to those levels whereon the soul becomes infused with and eventually attains the status of spirit reality. This actual transfer from material association to Morontia identification is effected by the sincerity, persistence, and steadfastness of the God-seeking decisions of the human creature.
So this thing we call life in this physical body and everything is our temporary vessel, okay? And when we go on after death, and when you experience death, we go on and we get a more permanent type of vehicle, a more permanent type of material body, which is what we call the immortal nature or the Morontial soul. And we stay with that same Morontial soul through multiple levels until we get to the spirit reality, and then we get another totally new body, okay? But this self that we know in this life goes with us from the material body to the Morontia body to the spiritual body, and eventually to become phenomeners, okay? And we do this by the decisions we make in this life starting out, right? Okay, continue slides. When we make it through another section, y'all, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 slides. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Bill, would you take the next one?
The phenomenon of death. Urantia generally recognize one kind of death, the physical cessation of life energies. But concerning personality survival, there are really 3 kinds.
So we think of death as just the end of physical life, right? But there's really 3 different types of death, and that's what we're going to go over. All right. Stephen, would you take the first one, please?
Okay. Spiritual soul death. Even when mortal man has finally rejected survival, and he has been pronounced spiritually insolvent, morally bankrupt, in the co-joint opinion of the adjuster and the surviving Seraphim, when such coordinated advice has been recorded on reversa, after the censors and their reflective associates have verified these findings, thereupon do the rulers of Seraphim order the immediate release of the indwelling monitor. But this release of the adjuster in no way affects the duties of the personal or group Seraphim concerned with that adjuster. abandoned individual. This kind of death is final and it's significant, irrespective of the temporary continuation of the living energy of the physical and mind mechanism. From a cosmic standpoint, the mortal is already dead. The continuing life merely indicates the persistence of the material momentum of cosmic energy.
This is really important, right? Spiritual or soul death. Okay. Notice they say here that when you're pronounced spiritually insolvent, morally bankrupt, and it's the opinion of the adjuster and the Seraphim that you have nothing salvageable, right? This is someone walking around and living, okay? But you can get to the point where there's nothing spiritually valuable in you and you're considered morally bankrupt. At that point, the Ancients of Days on your versa can rule that you're not really a spiritual being anymore. You're not capable of spiritual thoughts. And so the thought adjuster is released from service. And even though the guardian angel has to stick around and stay with you till the end of your life, when your life comes to its end, you don't go on. That's it. That's all she wrote. No more. Right? So that's what they call spiritual death. Right? Yeah.
It reminds me of a zombie.
It is. Really. Well, it's not really a zombie though, Rodney, because these people walk and talk and have lives like anybody else. They just don't have any spiritual inkling whatsoever, and they never will. Either that or they've rejected the spiritual concepts in their life to the point where the Ancients of Days consider them irreparable. In other words, they'll never straighten out. So it makes no sense that the adjuster is left in them to be tortured by these immoral thoughts and all these other things that they're not like real people, really. They're just animals. Okay?
So this could happen on the mansion world too.
It can happen on the mansion world too. That's right. It sure can. But when the Ancients of Days make that decision on the mansion world, what's the difference though, Rodney? Is that life force that makes you who you are is immediately removed. And that's the job of the guardian, or the archangels, to carry that order out. So,
Yeah, okay. What about Lucifer?
he hasn't been adjudicated yet, Bill. That's the whole point of this. When everyone in the Lucifer rebellion has been adjudicated and given ample opportunity to repent, when that's done, then all those who refuse to repent, the life force will be taken from them. And that was one of the things in the Lucifer rebellion that Lucifer complained about, is he called the agents of the Ancients of Days their henchmen. You remember that? Because they remove the life force of those beings that make the decision they're not going to go along with the status quo of the universe. You can't have rebellion in a universe indefinitely. That's all there is to it. We won't ever all reach light and life if we have rebellion, right? So, they would be considered what? Spiritually dead.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But only the Ancients of Days can make that decision. Right? And it's interesting because when Jesus went through his testing before his baptism on the mountain, and he was approached by Satan as the representative of Lucifer, his response to Satan was that he would not judge him, and it's the job of a higher order or higher court for him to be judged. So he would leave that judgment up to the ancients of days. Right?
Right.
So even Jesus did not judge Satan. He left it up to the ancients of days because that's the way it is. That's the way it works. Right?
But Jesus said that, although he did not have it, but he could make a judgment, and the judgment would be final.
That's exactly right. And after the end of the rebellion, completely, okay, after his baptism, right? And he was on the mountain with Gabriel and Father Melchizedek. At that point, it was returned word to him that he basically won his sovereignty of the universe. So he could make a decision at any time to judge all those beings which he created, but he chose not to. He left that up to the ancients of days.
Right.
Okay? But he has the right to do that as the creator of his universe. Not only that, any other rebellion that breaks out immediately in his universe now can be judged immediately by the ancients of days. They will wipe it out immediately. You know? So this long waiting period of adjudication will not happen if that happens again. We'll just put an end to it. Okay? All right. Let's lead on to the next. All right. Who's up? Stephen, I think. Did Stephen just read?
Just read. Yeah, I just read.
You just read. Okay, Rodney, would you take the next one, please, then?
Yeah. 2. Intellectual mind death. When the vital circuits of higher adjective ministry are disrupted through the aberrations of intellect, or because of the partial destruction of the mechanism of the brain, and if these conditions pass a certain critical point of irreparability, the indwelling adjuster is immediately released to the part of divinity. On the universe records, a mortal personality is considered to have met with death whenever the essential mind circuits of human will action have been destroyed. And again, this is death, irrespective of the continuing function of the living mechanism of the physical body. The body minus the volitional mind is no longer human, but according to the prior choosing of the human will, the soul as such, an individual may survive.
Okay. There's two ways here I want to point out that you can have intellectual or mind death. All right? First, it's through the aberrations of intellect. What are they talking about here? If you mentally go crazy, okay, and your mind is not functioning normally any longer, this could probably include people who have diseases that are degeneration of the mind. At a certain point, they get to the point where they're not their same personality any longer. Okay? So the thought adjuster would be released for them to go wait on the mansion worlds for them, right? So that's one sort of mind death where the human mind stops functioning properly, right? Like it's supposed to. And I'm sure people that have Parkinson's and Alzheimer's in their late stages, they may qualify under this too. Okay? There's also the disruption of the mind through the mechanism of the brain. In other words, if you got in an accident and you had severe brain damage, and your personality was no longer there, no longer affected, or you were considered brain dead, that would be considered an intellectual or mind death. And the body may continue functioning on for even years. You know, they can put you on a machine and keep you alive for years. But as far as the universe is concerned, you passed or you died at that point where your personalities or the adjutant mind circuits are no longer functioning in you. And at that point, you would probably, the adjuster would be released to go on to the mansion worlds. And as soon as your body physically stops functioning, the guardian seraphim would be released to take you to your records to the mansion worlds. Okay, so that's the second type of death, an intellectual or mind death. But according to this, even though these things happen, the human choosing you make before this happens gives your soul the right to survive. Okay? So if you chose to survive before this aberration of the mind, then you'll go on and wake up on the mansion worlds. Right? Alright. And now there's the third one. Rodney, would you take this one, please?
I just read that.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Diane.
3, physical, body and mind, death. When death overtakes the human being, the adjuster remains in the citadel of the mind until it ceases to function as an intelligent mechanism, about the time that the measurable brain energies cease their rhythmic vital pulsations. Following this dissolution, the adjuster takes leave of the vanishing mind just as unceremoniously as entry was made years before, and proceeds to Dimmington by way of reversal.
So the adjuster goes on to Dimmington, checks in, and then goes to the mansion worlds waiting for your arrival. Right? Your personality arrival. Okay. All right. After death, the material body returns to the elemental world from which it is derived. But the two non-material factors of surviving personality persist: the pre-existent thought adjuster, with the memory transcriptions of the mortal career, proceeds to Divinington. And there also remains in the custody of the guardian angel the immortal Morontia soul of the deceased human. So that which you've built up during this period of time of your soul. These phases and forms of soul, these once kinetic but now static formulas of identity, are essential to repersonalization on the Morontia worlds, and it is the reunion of the adjuster and the soul that reassembles the surviving personality, that reconsciousizes you at the time of your Morontia awakening. So do y'all have that clear? The adjuster takes your memory transcripts, goes to Divinington, right? And your Morontia soul, which you've been building up in this world, goes with the what? The guardian seraphim. Okay? And they come back together and they repersonalize you, both your transcript, your thought adjuster, and your soul at one time in your new Morontia body. Makes sense? On the mansion world. And that's after material death.
That's when we change from the corruptible to the incorruptible.
That's exactly right. Now, is there any purpose in having your human body on this planet after death? No.
Pardon?
Is there any purpose of having your human body on this planet after death? No.
No.
Not at all. There is no resurrection of the body. You know how in the Catholic Church they believe in the resurrection of the body? Well, the body is not resurrected. The soul is resurrected. The human body, once it's dead, it stays dead, always will be dead. Doesn't matter if you're buried or cremated, not in the least, right? Because you don't need that body anymore. It's not going to come up out of the ground. I hate to say it.
And you know who was a great example of that for us?
Is Jesus.
The risen Jesus.
That's exactly right. When Jesus,
Walter, I have a question.
yeah,
I just wonder, I understand the body of Jesus It's disintegrating.
Yes. Yeah.
I wonder why it was important for the stone to be rolled away, because it sure has led to some, the idea that his body rose.
Yeah, but the reason the stone was rolled away, Rodney, was that all mankind would know that the tomb was empty, that he was no longer there. And the reason that the midwayers and the other personalities that were there wanted the body disintegrated, you know how they disintegrated it, don't you? Rapid degeneration. Instantaneously. It's just as if you were cremated, or if you were stuck in the ground and you were there for 200 million years, disintegrated, right? But it was important for them to roll the stone away so that all the world could see that Jesus was no longer there and he rose from the dead. And he rose from the dead in the Morontia form, right? And the only reason we know he rose in the Morontia form is why? Because he was seen in 19 different appearances after he was dead, right? And those beings those people that saw him were the testament that he rose from the dead, that he didn't die in the tomb, right? His physical body died, just like we will die. But his Morontia or spiritual self rose from the dead, right? And it's different for him because he rose himself from the dead. He didn't have a juster and a guardian angel that took his soul to the mansion world and reassemble him, did he? He was different. He rose himself from the dead. He created his own Morontia being from nothingness, basically. And that's how he's different from us.
Yeah, don't forget, he said himself many times, I have the power to lay down my life and then to take it up again.
Take it back up again. That's exactly right. And that's exactly what he did. It's kind of interesting because he had all these hosts of beings that could help him out, to raise his Morontia body, but he chose to raise himself from the dead from his own volition, nobody else's, right? Nobody else involved. And only a Creator Son has that ability. So, it makes it different. All right, let's keep going. We've got 2 more slides and then we'll quit for the night. All right. Millie, I think you're up.
For those who do not have personal seraphic guardians, the group custodians faithfully and efficiently perform the same service as identity safekeeping and personality resurrection. The Seraphim are indispensable to the assembly of personality.
All right, so it's the Seraphim, the group Seraphim that takes care of those who have not been assigned what? A permanent Seraphim of destiny. Okay? All right. And Bill, would you take the last paragraph for tonight?
Okay. Upon death, the thought adjuster temporarily loses personality, but not identity. The human subject temporarily loses identity, but not personality. On the dimensional worlds, both unite in eternal manifestation. Never does the departed thought adjuster return to earth as the being of former indwelling. Never is personality manifested without the human will. And never does a disadjusted human being after death manifest active identity or in any manner establish communication with the living beings of earth. Such disadjusted souls are wholly and absolutely unconscious during the long or short sleep of death. There can be no exhibition of any sort of personality or ability to engage in communication with other personalities until after completion of survival. Those who go to the mansion worlds are not permitted to send messages back to their loved ones. It is the policy throughout the universes to forbid such communication during the period of a current dispensation.
Okay, so once people die, their soul goes to the mansion worlds, right? Can they send messages back to their loved ones? No. No. Can people talk to dead people? No. Are there ghosts? No. According to this paragraph. It clears up all these things that are mysteries to people. They think they saw their dead mother, and they think they saw a ghost outside their window, and they think because something fell off their shelf that they're being haunted. Are these things ghosts? No. There's always an explanation of such things. There's always mysteries in the world, but there's always a logical explanation of everything. Okay? These shows you see on TVs where people say they're talking to ghosts, do they really talk to ghosts? No. I hate to burst their bubble, and I hate to burst all these bubbles of people out here that think they can communicate with their dead relatives, but it ain't happening. I'm sorry. As they say in the South, it ain't happening. In the North, it doesn't happen, right? I hate to burst
Not all
everybody.
these ghost shows on TV.
They're a bunch of malarkey, Bill.
That's what I've been trying to tell Gary for years.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. It just doesn't. I'm sorry. You know, people see strange apparitions and all sorts of stuff. Some of it is the miscommunication in their own human minds. It can be phenomena from who knows what, you know. I mean, there's millions of possibilities. You know, we live in one sort of time-space continuum, right? We don't know that in another time-space continuum, the reflections of someone that's been here before might be there. We don't know these things, right? But they're not ghosts. They can't communicate with you. You know? They have no personality. With no personality, there's no function of brain function, and with no brain function, they can't talk to you, can they? So, anyway. So, you know that old saying, I ain't afraid of no but ghost? It's pretty much true. There's nothing out there to be afraid of.
Roger, you pointed out that instead of ghosts, it may be midway creatures.
It can be midway creatures. It could be dozens of things. Not only midway creatures, Rodney, but some of the things, apparitions we might sense or see may be student visitors in the Morontia form on this planet. You know? We got millions and millions of visitors on this planet from the mansion worlds all the time, right? And who's to say that the physical controllers might allow you to see one of them here or there? You know, that's up to the master physical controllers, right? So, I'm not saying you might not see something, but I'm saying they're not ghosts. Not in the sense we think. They're not somebody that's been here before. If we see some apparition of some being, it's probably a being from another planet that wants to come and see the world of the cross because Jesus was here, right? Or it could be a midwayer trying to communicate with you because it's got some important task for you to do, right? There's always possibilities. But does that mean there's any ghost? There's not any ghost.
Question.
Yeah,
You know, you mentioned the midway creatures before,
yeah.
a little bit ago. I thought all of the bad boy midway creatures were taken care of previously.
They are. But there remains on this planet the loyal midwayers. Okay? And their function is to take care and help with the universe function of this planet.
Well,
And they have the right, if they're ordered to make themselves visible to human beings for certain reasons. They don't do it very often, but they can if they at will wanted to do that. But they also have to have the permission of the master physical controllers to do that. They're just not allowed to appear before you because they have a whim to do so, right? You know what caused the confusion about that is when the rebel midwayers rebelled, they would make themselves appear without permission to all these native beings and all these humans, and that's where the legends of devils and demons and all these things came from, right? So, and there aren't any rebel midwayers on this planet anymore, period. None. Zip. Right? On the day of Pentecost, all of them were taken away. All of them.
Oh,
Huh?
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
On the day of Pentecost, that, everything was taken care of, or the truth was dispersed.
That's right. That's exactly right. Okay, next time we will do the Section 4 adjusters after death. And let me mention this, my mother has to go in surgery this same day, the next visit, so we're going to do everything we can to get back in time for the meeting. So we'll plan on having the meeting to go over the second half. Some reason she has complications at the hospital and we have to stay later, we will take this up the week after that. Okay? But let's plan on trying to have it next week. Okay? All right. Let's have a little prayer and we'll close for the evening. Sweetie, would you like to close us today?
We just thank you so much, Father, for this opportunity to come together to study the Word that you have given to us for this divine revelation. Our hearts are constantly in awe of the information that we learn on a daily basis and that we study together as a group. And may we take it into our daily lives as we progress in our life and share it with others as we see the opportunity. And our hearts are just so thankful for everything. And it's in the name of Jesus we pray and give thanks. Amen.
Amen. And thank you for joining us from home. Please come see us again. And next time we'll take up the other half of this.